If you ever want to know how someone truly sees you, give them a drink, put them in front of a fire, and let a small crowd lean in. The fire does strange things. It softens faces, lowers guards, and drags the truth out like smoke, curling toward the sky. People think they're just sharing stories. But really, they're confessing. That was Brooke's idea. She said we'd been drifting too far apart, living side by side but barely touching. Too much time glued to glowing screens, too many weeks swallowed by work, not enough space for anything that looked like us. And I didn't argue. She was right. The silence between us had been growing, thin but sharp, like a crack running through glass. So we packed the SUV with way too expensive REI gear we didn't know how to use, bickered over tent poles in the driveway, and drove 3 hours into a pocket of nowhere so empty even the radio gave up halfway. Out there was nothing but trees and shadows. No email waiting, no notifications buzzing in our pockets, no Netflix humming in the background. Just us, 2 other couples, and though I didn't know it yet, a guest who would change the weekend. It was supposed to be peace. But I didn't know I was stepping into a funeral the quiet kind, where the body still breathes, but love is already dead. That first night felt harmless enough. We burned dinner on the grill, turned card games into competitions nobody could really win, and laughed at how hopeless we were with tent poles and half-ripped instructions. For a while, Brooke looked like the girl I used to know. She was loose, animated, carrying the conversation like she always did when she wanted to be the star. Her laugh rolled through the trees louder than the crackling fire. I let myself believe this trip might actually be working. Then there was Ryan. New face, new energy. He worked with her at the events company, or so she told me. According to Brooke, he just needed to get away for a weekend, clear his head. And maybe that was true. But it didn't slip past me that she hadn't mentioned him once before this trip. He walked in like he belonged, arms full of whiskey bottles and that easy charm people either love instantly or learn to hate later. Brooke couldn't stop laughing at his stories. The way her hand lingered on his arm when he made a joke, the way her shoulders angled toward him instead of me. It was subtle, but not invisible. Everyone else welcomed him like a stray dog that showed up at the campsite. I smiled, nodded, played along, but inside, something shifted. It wasn't jealousy, yet more like a tap on the shoulder from my gut, a quiet warning I tried to ignore. The second night started easy. Somebody passed around plastic cups filled with cheap wine. Another guy fiddled with a Bluetooth speaker until old 90 Seconds throwbacks spilled out into the trees. A bag of half-melted marshmallows made its way around the circle, sticking to fingers, dropping in the dirt. For a while, it was the kind of scene you'd expect from a weekend like this, messy, simple, harmless. We sat, wrapped in blankets, trading stories. How we met, first dates, the awkward moments couples polish into something funny after a few years. Each pair took their turn, voices rising and falling with practiced charm. Everyone laughed, even at the bad parts, because that's what you do when you're tipsy and half-lit by firelight. Then it was our turn. "Ethan and Brooke," someone said. "Come on, how'd you two end up together?" Brooke's smile appeared too quickly, her glass of Pinot Grigio catching the firelight. And without a second of hesitation, she said, "Oh, Ethan, he was just temporary." The group chuckled on instinct, like it was a punchline. But I felt my stomach drop before I even processed the words. At first, I thought I misheard her. The laughter around the fire was loud, the music still buzzing from that tiny speaker. But then Brooke leaned forward, eyes shining, and doubled down. She told them about her last breakup, how brutal it had been. The kind where you cry on the bathroom floor, block and unblock the guy every few hours, swear it's over, then start it all again. A couple people laughed knowingly, and she kept going like she was on stage. And then there was Ethan, she said, waving her glass in my direction. Calm, steady, safe. No drama, no chaos, nothing like the storm she'd just crawled out of. She explained that I was her reset button, her soft place to land. I always figured it was temporary, she laughed. I thought he knew that. The fire popped. The group stayed silent, unsure if they were supposed to laugh again. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself had shifted. And I realized nobody was going to speak up for me, not one of them. I didn't explode. I didn't slam my drink down or call her out in front of everyone. Instead, I just sat there, letting the words settle like ash in my chest. She kept laughing, sipping her wine, tossing her hair back like she hadn't just gutted me in front of 6 people. Nobody looked at me. Nobody even shifted in their chairs. It was like the whole circle decided at once to pretend it hadn't happened. That was maybe the hardest part. The isolation. Not the sting of her words, but the silence of everyone else. Eventually, I stood up. No speech, no scene, just a quiet nod to nobody in particular. I walked to our tent, unzipped it slowly, and crawled inside. Lying there on that thin sleeping mat we'd argued about at the store, I stared at the canvas ceiling while the fire popped outside. I could hear her laugh carrying through the night, brighter and lighter than it had sounded in months. And in that moment, I made no plan, no big decision. I just knew something inside me had ended. Morning crept in like a hangover I hadn't earned. The fire was cold, the campground quiet except for a few birds breaking through the haze. I unzipped the tent, stepped into the gray light, and started breaking down our gear piece by piece. No words, no noise, just the kind of silence that says more than anything else could. Brooke eventually joined me, yawning, stretching like we'd just shared some romantic woodland escape. You didn't say goodnight, she teased, grinning like we were in a French film instead of a cracked marriage. I shrugged, didn't want to interrupt the show. For a second, her smile faltered. Then she brushed it off, slipped back into her act. She asked if I was still grumpy. I didn't bother answering. Just folded the tarp, tied down the cooler, moved with steady hands like I hadn't heard a thing. If she was going to pretend nothing had happened, I wanted to see just how far she'd go. Turns out, pretty damn far. The drive back felt like the slowest car crash in history. The road stretched out forever, mile after mile of trees blurring together, while the silence inside the car pressed in heavier than the packed gear in the trunk. Brooke filled some of it with chatter. She talked about how we should do trips like this more often, how Ryan turned out to be surprisingly chill once you got to know him. She scrolled through her phone, took selfies with her campfire hair, even jotted down a note to leave the campground a glowing review. Meanwhile, I sat there gripping the wheel, every word she spoke carving the gap between us wider. She was living in a completely different movie, and I was just background noise in hers. At one point, she glanced over and asked, "You okay?" I gave her the shortest answer possible. "Yeah, just tired." That was enough for her. She went right back to scrolling, sipping water, humming along to the radio like nothing had happened. The silence wasn't loud. It was surgical, clean. Final. When we got home, Brooke kicked off her shoes like she'd just come back from a spa retreat, not a weekend that had gutted me. She poured herself a glass of red wine, curled up on the couch, and scrolled her phone like it was her best friend. I unloaded the car, hauled in bags, washed the mugs, stacked the gear neatly in the garage. Routine stuff, the kind of chores that keep your hands busy while your head tries not to collapse in on itself. Somewhere between her third sip of wine and my second rinse cycle, I decided I needed to hear what kind of story she'd spin. Not because I expected an apology, not even because I thought she'd feel guilty. I just wanted to know what lie she'd choose when faced with me. Sober and direct, I leaned against the living room doorway. "Hey, Can we talk for a second? She didn't even look up. About what? The fire, I said. What you said about me being your rebound. She finally pulled her eyes off the phone. Not guilty, not embarrassed, just irritated. It was a joke, Ethan. Everyone laughed. I told her that didn't make it less true. She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them like I was a kid sulking over nothing. You're so sensitive lately. It's not like I called you useless. I just meant you weren't supposed to be forever. The next morning, habit took over. I poured her coffee, slid the mug across the counter, and sat with my own, watching the steam rise. She barely looked up, hair in a messy bun, sweatshirt slipping off one shoulder, scrolling her phone like always. As if she hadn't called our marriage a pit stop around a campfire less than 2 days earlier. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, both of us with mugs in hand, the steam rising between us like a wall. I waited until the room grew quiet enough that the hum of the fridge was the only sound. Then I said it calm, steady, almost too soft. I think I need to take a few days. She blinked, eyes narrowing like the sentence didn't belong in her script. Take a few days for what? To clear my head, I answered. To get some space. That word space hung in the air. People hate it. It always means more than it says. Especially when a man says it without yelling, without drama. No slammed doors, no raised voice. Just a clean statement that can't be mistaken for anything else. Wait, she said, sitting up straighter now. This is about the fire, isn't it? You're still hung up on that? It's not just that, I told her, voice still calm. But yeah, it didn't exactly help. She gave me a dry laugh, sharp and dismissive, like she was brushing dust off her shoulder. It was a joke, Ethan. Everyone laughed. You're the only one who didn't get it. I shook my head slowly. No, I got it. I let the silence stretch, then added, I got it loud and clear. She stared at me for a moment, arms crossed, like I'd just canceled her dinner plans instead of our life together. Then she shrugged. Okay, you do that. No, please don't go. No, can we talk this through? Just a lazy wave of her hand before she dumped the rest of her coffee in the sink and walked out of the room. I stood there for a second, waiting to feel something: anger, grief, maybe even guilt. Nothing, just an odd clarity, like the static had finally drained from the air. So I packed. Not frantically, not like I was running away, but carefully, like a man who already knew he wouldn't be coming back soon. Into the duffel went a week's worth of clothes, my laptop, the charger she always stole, and a book she pretended to want to read but never opened. I didn't explain where I was going. I didn't ask if she'd be fine without me. I knew she would. Hell, part of me thought she might celebrate the quiet. When I finally told her I'd be gone for a week, maybe less, she didn't even look up from her phone. Just let me know when you want to talk, she said flatly. What she didn't realize, what she still doesn't, is that I wasn't leaving to think. I was leaving because the decision had already been made inside me. The place I found wasn't much. 1 bedroom, thin beige walls, furniture that looked borrowed from a thrift store, chipped plates, a sagging couch, curtains that didn't quite meet in the middle. It wasn't home, but it had what I needed: a bed, a desk, a lock on the door, and quiet. I dropped my bag on the floor and just stood there, listening. No echo of Brooke's voice in the hallway, no clinking of her glass in the sink, no passive-aggressive sigh drifting in from the other room, just silence. Strange, heavy silence. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I didn't even feel panic. I just exhaled one long, shaky breath, like I'd been holding it for weeks. The first 2 nights blurred together. I tried reading, but the words slid off the page. I put on an old movie, forgot the plot halfway through. Ordered takeout, ate pad thai straight from the carton, stared at the wall until my eyes hurt. People think leaving is the hard part. It's not. The hard part is the pause after, when you're no longer miserable, but not free either. That's where I lived, floating between doubt and defiance. What if I overreacted? What if she was just drunk? What if I was too final, too cold? Those thoughts came like ghosts, fading fast but showing up enough to haunt me. By the fourth day, the silence started to feel less like peace and more like a dare. I kept thinking maybe I should see her one more time, not to fix anything, not to apologize, just to find out if she'd finally say something real, something human. That morning I sent a text. "Hey, I'll stop by later to grab a few more things. If you're home, maybe we can talk." She didn't answer, but that wasn't unusual. Hours later, I grabbed my keys anyway and drove back to the house we used to call ours. Pulling into the driveway, I told myself a lie. If this goes well, maybe we can at least split like adults. Beautiful thought. Stupid thought. I still had my key. I still knew the weight of the doorknob in my hand, the sound it made when the lock clicked. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet I'd been craving. This quiet was wrong. Too still. A mug on the counter that hadn't been there before. Shoes in the hallway that didn't belong to me. Then I heard it. A laugh, male, confident, too comfortable to be a guest. I followed the sound into the living room, each step heavier than the last. And there she was, Brooke, sitting on the couch in one of my old t-shirts, barefoot, knees tucked under her like it was a lazy Sunday morning. Beside her, of course, was Ryan. The same Ryan who'd tagged along last minute, the one she swore was just a friend. He didn't look much like a friend now. His hand rested casually on her thigh, his coffee mug parked next to hers on the table like this was their routine, their home. Her hair was still damp, the kind of damp that doesn't come from rain or a quick rinse. No, it was shower damp. Fresh, intimate. She froze when she saw me. Ryan shifted, cleared his throat, suddenly less confident. I didn't shout. I didn't ask how long it had been happening, or how many weekends that were really his instead of mine. I just stood there, looking at both of them, memorizing the scene like it was the final photograph of a life I no longer wanted. Finally, I broke the silence. "Don't worry," I said. "I won't stay long." I walked past them without waiting for an excuse. Into the bedroom, I grabbed the last of my things, my guitar, a box of files from under the bed, the leather dop kit she'd given me 2 years ago, still unused. Funny how I once thought I might come back and fix things. Standing there now, it was obvious there was nothing left to fix. Brooke followed, voice cracking with panic. "Ethan, please, can you just stop for a second?" I zipped the duffel shut. "No." My tone was flat, almost gentle. "I'm really not interested." "It's not what it looked like," she whispered. I looked her dead in the eye. "Brooke, it's exactly what it looked like." She went pale. "You're really going to throw everything away over one mistake?" "This didn't start today," I told her, pushing past. Her arms folded, voice sharper now. "You're a coward." I stopped at the door, hand on the knob, and shook my head. "No, I'm someone who finally stopped pretending it was worth staying." I opened the door. She didn't follow. Didn't collapse into tears or beg for me to stay. She just stood there barefoot, frozen, staring at the man she thought would never leave. That night, the texts began short, pleading, then angry, then manipulative. I answered only once. "Don't contact me again. If it's important, go through my attorney." And with that, the cycle ended. I never went back. Not for revenge, not to win, not even for closure. I left for the one thing she'd chipped away at for years: peace.